Baby Charlotte was due to be born in 5 days' time. Yet her mother Abby gave birth to Charlotte last May, 4 months early. She weighed no more than a bag of sugar. Charlotte is one of 40,000 babies born prematurely in Britain every year. Tonight, we talk exclusively to the doctors who believe they can reduce those 40,000 births by a third. "100 babies are born prematurely in Britain every day. Although their entry to the world is traumatic, advances in medical care ensure most of these babies go on to lead normal lives." It's babies born under 28 weeks that are causing the greatest concern. Although many do survive, some grow up with mental or physical disabilities. Tonight, we reveal pioneering research which could have a major impact on reducing the amount of babies born too soon. Charlotte Elson is Abby and Jim's first baby. While making this film, they agreed to let us follow her fight for life. Charlotte has just passed 6 weeks now. Here she's in the intensive care unit at St Thomas's Hospital in London. At the moment, she's coping. This hospital is also the nerve centre of an exciting medical trial to prevent premature births. Doctors could have discovered a way to cure a disease called preeclampsia. That's high blood pressure in pregnant women, and it causes 12,000 early births each year.
Okay, so just have a quick look at this baby.
Dr. Lucy Chappell organised the 2-year trial, which involved over 200 women.
This special scan that looks at the blood flow going to your womb placenta can tell us whether or not you're likely to get preeclampsia later on in the pregnancy.
Preeclampsia is the rise in blood pressure of the mother during her pregnancy, together with the presence of protein in her urine. The fact that it can go on to a much nastier disease when the mother can start fitting, or her liver may fail, or her kidneys may fail, and that can lead to all sorts of problems, even death for both the mother and the baby.
Professor Lucilla Poston and Dr. Chappell believe that the cure for this disease may be as simple as taking a combination of high-dose vitamins.
We asked the pregnant women who were coming to St Thomas's to have their 20-week scan of the baby if they would have an extra scan of the blood flow going to the womb. And this was our way of picking up women who were at higher risk of developing preeclampsia. And that's looking absolutely fine at the moment. Gentle sound, and that's telling us that there's lots of blood flow getting through to your womb placenta, which is good. And that tells us that you're unlikely to get preeclampsia. If the scan was abnormal, then we asked them if they would like to take part in the vitamins in preeclampsia study. The other women were those who had had preeclampsia in the previous pregnancy. These women are also more likely to get preeclampsia in the subsequent pregnancy.
Sharon El-Alawi suffered preeclampsia when she was pregnant with her daughter Sophia.
Hello. Didn't know what it was. I hadn't read that paragraph in my pregnancy book. I'd skipped over it. When they told me how ill I was and that women die from it and the baby could be at risk, but when you're in that situation, you need someone to tell you 4 or 5 times before it sinks in.
Sharon was in hospital with preeclampsia for a week, but then doctors insisted the baby's life was in danger. Her daughter Sophia had to be born 8 weeks early.
The only known cure for this disease is actually delivery by the obstetrician and getting that baby out fast. And then the mother gets better and the baby will be all right.
And I was excited to have a girl, and she didn't even look small to me because I'd wrapped her up in so many blankets. And she was looking at us and looking around and breathing, and they said, oh, she didn't even need oxygen. When I walked into the intensive care room, she was completely different. Her eyes were closed and screwed up tightly shut because of the bright lights. Her arms were in splints because they were feeding her the drips. She didn't have any clothes on. It's not normal. It's not the way you have when you have the baby at home. It's not a happy occasion. It's not a celebration. There's nothing going on.
I should be 31 weeks pregnant now. In fact, I looked in my diary and I had an appointment for a scan yesterday. So I didn't need that appointment.
Instead of spending time in the womb, premature babies spend many months here. They need to learn to breathe, to eat, and to fight off infection. It's an intensely traumatic time for both parent and baby. What kind of problems do they have?
They're born with intrinsic problems of their respiratory system, of their breathing. They need to be on a ventilator machine, a breathing machine, to support their breathing. They also have other problems in virtually every system of their body and need support for many of those. They're very susceptible to infection and other complications that can arise during the first few weeks or even first few months of their life.
"9 weeks old now, and Charlotte's had a bad chest infection. She's recovering slowly.
You're being a good girl. Well, I'd only just sort of started getting confident about Charlotte, and then that happened, so it's really quite upsetting, quite nerve-wracking. Hopefully she won't have another setback like that.
In intensive care, such setbacks are a daily occurrence. Would many of the babies that we see here today have survived 10 or 20 years ago?
Certainly the outcomes now compared with 20 years ago are significantly better, particularly for babies born after 24 weeks. I think that the advances as far as looking after babies born before that are minimal. Really, you're talking about survival of 90% or over from 28 weeks onwards, and that certainly wouldn't have happened 20 years ago.
There are more and more small birth weight babies who are surviving now because the paediatricians do such a wonderful job in keeping them alive. But the incidence of death or disease in later life is really quite substantial in those babies, and everybody would agree that the best thing to do is to prevent those babies being born prematurely.
Beverly Baxter would agree. Her twins, Holly and Katrina, were born at 26 weeks. They were tiny, and their lives hung in the balance for many months.
They were like transparent little dollies in these cots surrounded by wires and monitors and a very pristine, sanitised environment. It was overwhelming. I was so afraid that they would die. I didn't really want to give myself the chance to get to know them, to bond with them.
But Holly and Katrina fought for their lives and won. They're now 8 years old and doing well. But like a minority of early babies, they have the kind of disabilities that doctors and scientists are working hard to prevent.
We've had a very good outcome, considering the stormy medical history of both the girls, particularly Holly. She has cerebral palsy, which is basically brain damage brought about by the hemorrhage she had. Although all 4 limbs of Holly's are affected and she's not able to walk unaided, she actually does very well. She's always been very articulate.
Can I have a go and bite now?
Yeah, I'll get your bike out.
Come on, one's gone.
Educationally, she's doing extremely well. She's above average in most subjects. Hey, you fair sprinting, weren't you? She's a delightful kid.
Up until now, scientists have been unable to clearly see the extent of the damage to brains of very small babies. This machine is the only one in the world which is able to produce clearly defined pictures of the brains of those babies as young as 24 weeks. Can you describe exactly what we're seeing here?
Well, this is the brain scan of a baby born at 24 weeks, and as you can see, the surface of the brain is really very smooth. It's quite egg-like. There's no wiggles on the surface at all. It's perfectly normally developed for 24 weeks, but of course it's got an awfully long way to go before it becomes the very large brain you see here. This brain looks more like a walnut than an egg, and you can see all the very complex development of the surface of the brain.
Routinely scanning babies under 28 weeks has provided the team at Hammersmith Hospital with unique evidence of brain damage to very early survivors.
I think what we found out with this machine is that we had thought that most babies who were born were probably born with pretty normal brains and without any problems, but something like 60% of the children we scanned very early on after birth have had some abnormalities.
Now that doctors can see these brains, they can start trying to decide what the damage might mean and whether it contributes to problems in later life.
The advantage of this machine is that we can see very subtle changes, and we expect that these very subtle changes will relate to the less obvious deficits as the children grow up, so problems with behaviour or problems with perception.
Let's get your helmet on, you've got to be safe. Okay.
Why does he count puppet?
Because you are a puppet. Off you go.
Holly's twin sister, Katrina, was also very ill at birth. Physically, she's well, but like a small group of very early babies, she has the kind of subtle disabilities that Professor Edwards believes his machine can detect in the first few hours of life.
Well, Katrina was the smaller of the two at £1 13 ounce, so she was very marginal for survival. Her lungs were in a very bad state. She was ventilated at a much higher rate and for far longer than Holly. Katrina was very slow in acquiring a lot of physical skills, and then in the academic learning environment she has problems in literacy and numeracy. Outwardly she looks like a very normal, able child, but there are problems underneath.
Those problems are known as hidden disabilities, something Professor Neil Marlowe has spent years researching at Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham. He studied more than 100 premature babies until they were 12 years old. What do you actually mean by hidden disabilities?
Well, the vast majority of very premature children grow up and are fine. They go into adult life without problems. But a significant minority of children have problems at school that we call hidden disabilities. Things like problems in the schoolroom, problems of attention, problems of clumsiness, because they're not immediately apparent. They're not obvious to people as they look and talk to children and their families.
Did you find some of these difficulties tended to correct themselves later on in life?
No, these children didn't, well, as a group, the children didn't catch up.
Now that's quite astonishing, because up until now it's thought that they do catch up.
When we first started to do the research, we believed that we would show that these disabilities disappeared as time went on, and in fact they didn't. They remained much the same. The same proportion of children had problems in schoolwork, the same proportion of children had problems with their behaviour and hyperactivity, and the same proportion of children had problems with clumsiness.
Is Katrina showing any signs of catching up?
With the support she's getting, she's holding her own and making significant progress, which is what one would hope to see.
Very premature children, that's babies under 32 weeks, need careful assessment early in school life and action taken to try and improve their performance, and through the well-worn paths of education are probably the most beneficial things for them.
Professor Marlowe's research found as many as 1 in 4 early babies like Katrina have these hidden disabilities.
I consider them both to be very able kids in their own right, and I've certainly had a lot of joy from them. They're very rewarding kids, and there is something special about being with them and what you get from them. You're going to give me a hug? I love them both very much. Oh, that's the nearest you'll get.
As well.
Back at St Thomas's, Charlotte is 10 weeks old, but she's had another setback. She's on antibiotics and needs more oxygen because she's struggling to breathe. Abby's very worried about her. She couldn't talk to us today. Finding ways to prevent premature births is costly and intensive. This work is largely ignored and poorly funded, and money for research depends almost exclusively on charities like Tommy's campaign.
I think there has been a need to educate the public into the need for research into the health of the unborn child, because it has been a low priority in the past. I do believe that that is changing, that there is an increasing awareness of the need for research into this area.
How far off do you think we are into understanding and solving the problems of these pregnancies?
Medical research is a long, slow process. We believe that with the funding policy that we have in place, funding a variety of doctors and scientists around the country, we will gradually piece together this jigsaw, which is problem pregnancies.
Charlotte's 11 weeks old now. Abby's had to go back to work, but Charlotte's much better. She's doing so well, they've reduced her oxygen supply so she can eventually breathe on her own.
Today was the first time really that I've ever heard her really cry like a baby and not just a soft whimper. And she's also that bit more solid as well, so it's easier to, I feel a lot more confident to pick her up on my own and just give her a cuddle like this, and she appreciates it as well. It really calms her down.
2 years ago, Tommy's decided to fund the vitamin trial to find a cure for preeclampsia. That's the disease which causes high blood pressure in pregnant women and kills 1,000 babies every year. Sharon El Alawi agreed to take part in the trial when she became pregnant with her son Yusuf. She hoped it would avoid the traumas that surrounded her daughter's birth. So what did the trial actually involve?
Taking vitamins every day. 2 types of vitamins every day. It's a high dose of vitamins. They pinpointed that it could be this, and they wanted to test it out.
Do you think Yusuf is healthy because you took those vitamins?
So I just took them every single day, right to the end of my pregnancy, right to the last day when I went into labour. I believe the vitamins kept it at bay. I personally didn't break out in full-blown preeclampsia again. That's a healthy boy.
Women are not being encouraged to take these vitamins until more tests are carried out. But at the moment, there's no evidence of any side effects for the baby.
All the organs are developed by 14 weeks. The baby is fully formed, but it just has a lot of growing to do. We were happy that these vitamins wouldn't affect the baby. These were made specially for the study to make sure they didn't contain any additives that weren't safe in pregnancy. But they're not the same as the ones that you buy in the shops, because those do have other things in them usually.
Hello.
Great news for Charlotte. After 12 weeks, she's finally made it out of intensive care. It's a major breakthrough.
All her movements are far stronger than they were. Her grip, her tempers and her tantrums. She's awake a lot more. She seems a lot more alert as well when she does have her eyes open. Everything's sort of falling into place now. It's like, a real baby. I feel like I'm being a mother as well at last.
In the past 50 years, advances in technology have undoubtedly saved the lives of many babies. But for some of the very tiny ones, technology is not enough to save them. And for parents, questions about why their babies were born early remain unanswered. Questions Linda Taylor continues to ask even after the miracle birth of Christopher.
He's an absolute joy. He's blonde, blue-eyed, very, very noisy, loves his dad to bits, and I'm sure it won't be long before he's a little bit more mobile and into everything. But he's absolutely the icing on the cake.
Linda's first child, Suzanne, was born at 26 weeks, but is now a healthy 9-year-old. But Linda lost twin boys after that, and then a daughter, Hannah, all born before 24 weeks and all too small to survive.
The baby boys and Hannah were absolutely perfect to look at. It was just as though they were sleeping. I held them in my arms, gave them a kiss and said goodbye to them, and then I asked the midwife to take them away. It was very upsetting, despair, frustrating, the 1,001 questions of why should it happen to me, why, what have I done wrong. It still hurts now to recall that moment or moments, and to think of the hurt that we all felt. It was a pain that I thought I wouldn't want anyone to experience that at all.
What makes the pain worse is that doctors still don't know why her babies were born too soon. Where there's no clear condition like preeclampsia, answers are more difficult to find.
Come on, wait for this one, wait.
It's the unsolved problems like Linda's which drive scientists harder to find the answers. Infections in the womb are also thought to be a major cause of premature birth, and now researchers are on the verge of discovering just how that infection enters the womb and then how it can be treated to avoid an early birth. This laboratory at the University of Bristol is where researchers are trying to pinpoint how an infection gets into the mother's womb. They believe the small but vital barrier which protects the baby in the womb is sometimes destroyed by a powerful protein called an enzyme.
The significant steps we've taken already in the group here is to show that this enzyme is present in women, some women, and that it can indeed break the plug that separates the baby from the outside world.
The researchers are about to produce a simple test that could allow doctors to find out which women are at risk of infection. What do you think then is the significance of your test?
Well, there have been tests for this enzyme, complicated tests in a laboratory like this for a long time. And the beauty we feel of the rather simple test that we've now developed is that it could be made into a colour change test, like a pregnancy test. And the advantage of that is that potentially GPs, midwives, and perhaps the women themselves could test to see if they have this enzyme.
How significant do you think this piece of research could be in terms of the whole scale of premature births?
Well, if the process that we're working on proves as we hope, then it's a very simple, cheap test which could warn women that they're at risk of preterm labour.
So what can be done for those women at risk? At St Thomas's Hospital, an antibiotic is the focus of a new trial to try and treat such early infections.
Normally inside the womb there is no infection at all. It's a sterile area. For some reason, infection can get into the womb and that can trigger labour, particularly in the very early deliveries. So between about 24 and 28 weeks, it's often more than half of the pregnancies that are associated with infection.
Half? That many?
Yes, and it is those pregnancies that we are most interested in because the long-term disabilities come from those very early deliveries, and we are hoping to be able to treat infection which women don't know about a long time before they go into labour.
So you're saying a simple course of these antibiotics could reduce the amount of early births?
That is what we're trying to find out, and we're trying to find out if that can be done safely. It could have quite a substantial impact on the total number of very early births, and it's those very early births that we really want to change.
This groundbreaking research could help women like Linda in the future, so they're spared the kind of guilt she still feels.
I always blame myself for what happened at the time of these events. Is it because I painted the wall? Is it because I ate this food? Is it because I ran down to the bus stop? Is it the stress of your job? Or the stress of everyday life even? Anything that you could possibly clutching at straws to try and get an answer to give you peace of mind.
Unfortunately, it's very frustrating for us because we often don't know the causes of very early deliveries. However, with the trials we are currently doing, we hope we can explain a number of the early deliveries that previously we were unable to give an explanation for.
Charlotte's 13 weeks now and getting stronger every day. Now she's able to cry for food and loves being cuddled by her mother.
She's had a bath, her first bath, a few days ago, which I think she seemed to quite enjoy, but she didn't like having her hair washed. But it certainly settled her for the night.
Right, welcome everybody to the early bird session. Okay. This is one of the first parent classes you've been able to attend during your pregnancy.
At antenatal classes in Salford, midwives encourage women very early in pregnancy to be healthy and to watch for signs of illness.
So those are the symptoms of preeclampsia, the main symptoms.
But mothers and midwives can only look out for these symptoms. It's left to scientists to find the cure.
Read all about it.
But a major victory may just have been won against preeclampsia. The results of the vitamins trial at St Thomas's Hospital have just been published in the leading UK medical journal, The Lancet. If larger studies produce similar results, thousands of babies' lives could be saved. What were the final results?
Half of the women were taking the real vitamins and the other half were taking the dummy tablets. In the group who took the dummy tablets, 21 developed preeclampsia. In the group who were taking the real vitamins, only 6 developed the disease. So we reduced the occurrence of preeclampsia quite considerably.
I mean, those sound extraordinary results.
I think that after all these years of research in preeclampsia, where we've all been waiting for a preventative treatment that works, it is great news that it's 2 simple vitamins that pregnant women can take safely that seem to be having such promise.
Well, the proportion of women who got preeclampsia who took the tablets was very different from those who were taking the dummy tablets. So I don't believe that has occurred by chance. It is an important finding, and I am fairly confident that it is very, very important in terms of this disease.
One day, Yusuf's parents may be able to tell him he was a new breed of baby, at risk of an early birth, but saved by this pioneering research.
Hello, you.
Yeah.
It's unlikely that we'll be able to eradicate it totally because some women are at very high risk of getting preeclampsia. But even if we can reduce it, or if we can prevent it to some degree, that will still be very important for all pregnant women.
This research will give hope to many future mothers. And for Charlotte, the worst seems to be over. She could be sleeping in her own cot in just 3 weeks' time.
Charlotte's just over 3 months now, and I'm at last really able to enjoy having her. She's had baths, she's feeding with a bottle, I can cuddle her when I want and comfort her. And at times I didn't think that that would ever be possible. And I'm just really glad that she's here and she's doing so well.